Guys, my name is Nonima Tigela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about the Capitec bank statement. My God, Uramsipile did a number on that. I don't know if you guys noticed this. And what I've noticed is that, you know what, Ubaloyi no Gininda were very confident when it comes to the so-called evidence that they claim they have against the accused. They were very, very confident. And it's something that you are like, I cannot believe this is what we are hearing inside the courtroom. You are left shocked when you hear the evidence that they promised South Africans when they first appeared. Sorry, these guys, when they first appeared, we were promised a watertight case, guys. We were promised a watertight case, and because Baloyi, for almost 3 months, he had Bongani Ntanzi sitting in a witness box. He sounded confident, Ubaloyi. He was controlled, untouchable. He was so sure of himself. But Uramsipile was like, for the past few weeks, I'm going to show you I will do it within plus minus 2.5 hours. Because it was not even 5 hours, actually, when you look at it. It was almost, because Uramsipile, let's say he started a cross-examination yake, ngekora to 11. Ngekora past 11, that was 30 minutes. And then they went to tea time. And then ngekora to 12, they came back. Quarter to 12 to quarter to 1. That's 1 hour. Ne? And then, so that's 1 hour, 30 minutes. Let's say that's 1 hour, because that was 57 when they stopped to go for tea time, for lunch break. So let's say it's 1 hour, 45 minutes. Ne? And then he came back from 2:05 until, let's say, 2:30. That is 2 hours, guys. That is 2 hours. And let's say 2.5 hours. If you calculate it well, it's 2.5 hours. That is the maximum that Uramsipile spoke to Ntanzi for a re-exam. 2.5 hours. And my God, it was late. Now, one of the other issues that he touched on was the record, or he asked Ntanzi about the bank statement, the Capitec bank statement, why Ntanzi was not happy about that. You know, the confidence of Baloyi when it came to that was met with precision. And in just a few calm questions from Advocate Ramsipile, he did something very dangerous, Ramsipile. He forced the state's own evidence to explain itself. And that's where everything started. Everything started going wrong for the state. Everything started going very, very wrong. It was bad. It was not nice. What Ramsipile did there, it was not nice. And there was a shift from control to scrutiny, because Ramsipile was like, I am going to scrutinize this situation. I am going to scrutinize. When Advocate Ramsipile stepped in during that re-exam, the entire courtroom changed. The entire energy of that courtroom changed, Gesan. Cross-examination became pressure, dominacy, narrative building. That was Baloyi, right? And then re-examination was equal to precision, repair, exposure of weaknesses. And right there, Ramsipile wasn't trying to perform anything, no miracles, nothing. He was doing something far more dangerous. He tightened the loose screws. Oh, he dealt with the loose screws, and he was like, I am going not to tighten the loose screws. I am going to tighten the record. And my word is going to be the final one on that record when it comes to Bongani Ntanzi. And my God, he did what? He did what? Oh, my goodness. Firstly, the bank statement problem, Exhibit DD1. This is not a small issue. This is a potentially structural damage to the state case. And let's isolate what just happened there. What happened there? Let's isolate. Let's talk about only that. Firstly, dispute of Section 236 evidence. The accused directly challenges the reliability of the bank statement admitted under Section 236, which normally allows documents to be accepted as prima facie proof. That's huge, right? Because Section 236 works like this. Firstly, the document is accepted unless successfully challenged. Secondly, once challenged credibility, the state must now prove its accuracy. And here, the challenge is not vague, it's specific, right? Secondly, the phone number discrepancy when it comes to this Capitec bank statement. The accused says the number on the bank statement that starts with 6060 is not supposed to be linked to my Capitec account. The ECS number actually belongs to another bank. I used it to Standard Bank when I was opening the Standard Bank account. Now, this introduces a serious legal issue, misattribution of financial identity. And if this is true, it means the account linkage is questionable. The person tied to transactions may be misidentified. The entire inference chain becomes unstable. Now, if this is questionable, we need a Capitec individual. Why did Baloyi not bring people from the bank if he trusted this bank statement? Why didn't he bring someone from Capitec to come and speak on this? Why did he lead Ntanzi on his own? But Baloyi is not a bank official. Why? He's not a bank or financial expert. Why did he do this? Why? Point number 3, lack of transaction source clarity. Now, he also, Ntanzi, attacks the description of transactions, no clear origin of funds, no labeling, salary, bonus, etc., no traceable sources of references. In legal terms, lack of evidential weight. Now, a bank statement without clear attribution becomes weak for proving movement, weak for linking a person to specific conduct, vulnerable for reasonable doubt. Now, if Ntanzi is questioning, why is it not showing salary in Tonton? Because with bank account yako, when its salary is paid, it shows isuka kwa ShopRite, isuka kwa Edgars, isuka kwa Pep, jalo njalo. It shows salary payment. Why is Ntanzi's one not showing? And there was a loan also that was questionable there. All right. And then number 4, the big allegation, wrong number, wrong year. This is where it gets explosive. Ntanzi claims the real number from 2014 was not brought to court. Instead, a 2018 number was used, and it was presented as if it belonged to 2014. That is not just a contradiction. That is an allegation of misrepresentation of evidence, possible fabrication, or reckless handling. Even if unproven, this creates serious doubt about investigative integrity. Point number 5. Before we go to point number 5, honestly, if Ntanzi uti le number yakwa Capitec ndandinayo ngo-2014, but now I see the one that I started using ngo-2018 being there by Capitec, that is very questionable, and it's bringing a lot of questions. Kanti, if there was a Capitec person there who was explaining this date, Bongani Ntanzi came through, here is a picture of him because Capitec takes pictures. Here's a picture of him inside the bank, and then he requested a contact number change, what change, all of those things. Immediately his salary came in, and it was coming from a place, Why was there no official from the bank? Do you see why Bongani Ntanzi is complaining? Point number 5, unauthorized KYC change. Final nail, he denies authorizing any change to his banking contact details. He does not know who updated the KYC info. This raises chain of custody issues for data, possibility of third-party interference, weakness, reliability of the bank's linkage to him. Now, Bongani Ntanzi has the right to call someone from Capitec Bank to come and scrutinize these banking details. Now, legal implications, and this is where it gets real for this situation. This moment triggers multiple legal consequences. Firstly, a burden shifts back to the state Once reliability is challenged, the state must now call bank officials, prove how the data was generated, explain discrepancies. Okay, the state case has been closed, but Judge Ratha, this is where he's saying, get Capitec inside the bank now. If he was a judge that was after justice, he was going to say, okay, Undanzi has these issues. Can we get a Capitec bank person to come to court? He was going to say that. Number two, probative value collapse if unexplained. Even if admitted, the court can say we give this little to no weight, and that's deadly because cases don't fail only on admissibility; they fail on weight and credibility. Number three, reasonable doubt expands. Now you have wrong number claims, wrong timeline claims, unknown data changes, unclear transaction origins. That is cluster of doubt, Gesan. And in criminal law, one reasonable doubt is enough. So in this case, this is a lot. This is a lot. Now, what Ramsipile actually did, this is a master stroke from him. This wasn't a random questioning. This was surgical. He didn't argue. He didn't exaggerate. He let the accused expose the cracks himself. That's powerful because courts trust clarified testimony more than lawyer arguments. So if Judge Ratha is interested in justice, he will see this as it is. Now, we said this perfectly. It's not about how confident something sounds. It's about whether it can survive scrutiny. And right now, this part of the state case no longer flowing, no longer controlled, now defensive. And now the real takeaway from this is that this is how case quietly started to fall apart, not with shouting, not with dramatic objections, but with moments like this. A document gets questioned, a number doesn't match, a timeline shifts, and suddenly the structure is no longer stable. And that is where Baloyi's problems are at right now. And he knows it. The judge knows it. The defense knows it. Us, the so-known learned friends, we know it, we see it. Unless you are stupid. If you can't see it, we have no issues with you. Don't see it. Tina, the people that can see it, we can unsee it. There is a problem there. And if Ramsipile can bring a Capitec official, that is Chile for Baloyi. That's Chile for Baloyi, and he knows it too. Now, I don't know how he is going to get out of this one, but it's big. And also, do you know what I know? Strong cases do not panic under scrutiny. Weak ones do. What do weak ones do? They start explaining. Then they start contradicting, and then they start collapsing. And that is exactly what is happening when it comes to Baloyi. I'll see you on our next video. I want to hear your views when it comes to this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.